Hello, Canada's viewers. Welcome to episode 23 of Canada and Palestine, the War on Zionism. I am Aidan Jonah, editor-in-chief of Canada Files. I'm here co-hosting this show with Laith Marouf of Free Palestine TV. Laith, as always, thanks for being here.
Great to be with you, Aidan.
All right, Laith, we have so much to talk about, and we're going to start on a good note, actually. Palestine Action UK. They stole a bust of Chaim Weizmann, I believe from the University of Manchester. Now, Weizmann, first president of Israel. So let's talk about this. What was your reaction when you saw this news?
Oh, it was great. They took two busts of him, by the way, not
Oh,
one.
goodness.
And
Okay.
then they shared hours later that they cut off the head. I guess they spent a lot of time with some metal saw or something to cut off the head. Before that, they put pictures of both busts with a red and a black keffiyeh. So it was fun, I think, and it is
So
definitely
Laith,
freaking
I
out.
think I think maybe they were honoring, that that Israeli intelligence officer that was caught serving with ISIS a number of years ago. Maybe they were honoring him in his role in ISIS.
Yeah. So it was fun to see, and it definitely really pissed off the Zionists in the UK, and it also probably triggered some of the imperialist Brits that were, a few years ago pissed off at all the statues of British colonialists being thrown in the water and the rivers and beaches, whatever. So it's very effective, and I think a lot of people should be copycatting this. There's a lot to do in Canada. Palestine Action has been leading the way, destroying much of Elbit Technologies factories in the UK, destroying the banks and the insurance companies that finance and insure Elbit, and that should be done also in the UK to any war machine that is funding Israel and arming it.
Right, so we're gonna get to something actually on that topic when we touch on the Canada side of the show. But in terms of Palestine Action UK more generally, right, maybe you can talk a little bit more about the overarching work and maybe how people can take inspiration from that in Canada.
Yeah, the overarching work, they are a direct action organization. They're not about talk. And the core group that started it is something like 10 or 20 people. It has grown over the last year, but I think they're working in cell formation, so they don't have to, you have the general agreement of what you're trying to achieve and what kind of targets you're targeting. But then the groups are working separately in cells to otherwise they'll be infiltrated and they will be thwarted before they do their actions. So when we see a group of five maximum, this is what it is always like around five maximum, and taking action, destroying an Elbit factory, those five, this cell has made the plans and took the decisions and took the action without communicating with a wider structure. So that is the way to do revolutionary work right now, specifically with the AI and control of all our communications that is being collected. You cannot talk about these things in an open meeting. You can't talk about these things online before you do them. You have to work in very secretive ways and in a self-formation manner, as long as everybody understands what are the major goals and what's legitimate targets and what's not.
All right, Leif. So next, let's talk about the American election, the presidential election that'll change human history as we know it. Just kidding. How little will the US election and Trump's victory impact US foreign policy against Palestine?
Zero. Zero impact it will have. I mean, we have a record of 80 years of American positions, no matter what the president was, on what's happening in Palestine, and it's always been pro-colonial, pro-imperialist and okay with genocide of as many Palestinians and Arabs and Muslims as possible. So anyone that thinks things are going to change is clearly a fool, a tool, or an agent. Anyone that says that things could change under Trump and or under Harris. And we look at what Trump did in his first term. He announced occupied East Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and moved the American embassy into there. And when Biden came in, he didn't move the embassy back to Tel Aviv. So that shows that it didn't matter. Similarly, he announced the Syria's Golan Heights that are occupied by the Israelis as part of Israel. And now we should be expecting him to announce the West Bank and Gaza also as part of Israel. So, and no Democrat would have done less and or will oppose this. And I think from today till the inauguration of Trump, I think it's January 20th, I believe, uh, Netanyahu has free reign to kill as many people as possible and to attempt to defeat the axis of resistance before the coming of Trump into power in hopes that Trump can say, "Hey, I'm the peacemaker. Things are going to stop right now." But I think what will actually happen is Trump will come into power and we will go to a full-out war between the US and the axis of resistance. It may even happen before his inauguration, depending on how much of a whipping the Zionists receive over the next 2 months.
Well, you walked right into the question I wanted to ask you next. What steps may the axis of resistance take during the period before Trump formally assumes office in the United States? Could there be any changes focused on this period, or will this struggle continue without concern to the change of US president? And regardless, how do you think things will go before Trump comes in?
I think the axis of resistance must and will take advantage of you know, the change of guard that's going to happen inside the United States, just like Netanyahu is going to take advantage, and everybody's telling him to take advantage. There will be chaos within the administration, and it will not be able to take major decisions during this change of guard. And so the axis of resistance must prove uh, its worth before the coming of Trump and must take advantage to score as many points as possible before that. Maybe at that point, Trump, if he sees that the Israelis are totally on the brink of defeat, may end this war and or go directly into war. But the point is they have to finish with the stage of skirmishes with the Zionist colony and take it into another stage. And we saw that already today. Hezbollah bombarded these bases just on the edges of Ben Gurion Airport beside Tel Aviv. And these are where the cadets for the Air Force and so on are trained. And the Israelis are hiding their losses, but we saw the videos from colonists, this total destruction of these bases. So their Air Force cadets is one of their most precious, things that the Israelis have. And I want to note that Sayyid Qasim, the new Secretary General of Hezbollah, gave a speech today. And as I was coming back from filming in the field, we were listening to it. And he openly said there will be no ceasefire, that this war, there will be only a loser and a winner. There's no third option. And we are going towards that now. And we saw that being implemented through these attacks that happened today by Hezbollah. Their operations were clearly targeted. And in his speech, by the way, he mentioned that the resistance has three points of strength. and the Israelis have 3 points of strength. And when he mentioned the three strong points that the Israelis have, he said the number one thing is the Air Force. So once the Air Force of the Israelis is out of the equation, it's over for Israel.
All right, Leif. So one last thing I do want to quickly mention is, of course, the dissolution internally of the Zionist entity. Netanyahu fired the defense minister, Yoav Gallant. Now, let's be damn clear here. This is no point for mourning our sadness. He's a bastard along with Netanyahu and the rest of the regime. But it's notable simply because of this. It clearly shows that this regime just cannot last. It cannot cope with it. It is totally artificial and it is incapable of coping with resistance in the region.
Yes, and there's now rumors published in much of the Israeli media that Netanyahu will be firing also the head of the Mossad and the Amman, the two major intelligence services. So that shows you that basically all the security, intelligence, and military options that the Zionists have, been playing out over the last year have failed. This is why he has to fire them all and try to bring in different people with different ideas to try to achieve something. But they have failed in all their plans, militarily or intelligence. And so although it could be argued that their intelligence has fared better because of the assassinations and the pager terrorism acts, but you know, they still didn't achieve anything. Even with those killings, it didn't change anything on the ground. And so therefore it is a failure, because why put the option in front of the Prime Minister of Israel as an intelligence agency to assassinate Nasrallah or do that pager attack, except when you probably promised that it's going to change the outcome of the battle on the ground, and it didn't. Therefore, you got to get
All right,
fired.
so now we are going to shift to the Canada front. There was radical action, and this is what I was foreshadowing earlier. Radical action taken by pro-Palestine activists in Canada. Now, Harsha was the person who tweeted about this and caught my eye. She said a group of people have sabotaged Gas Top's factory in Ottawa, and this apparently is the only place in the world where engine sensors are produced for Lockheed Martin's F-35 combat jets. And in her own words, including the ones dropping 2,000-pound bombs on Gaza. So let's talk about this. Like, this is a big deal that you're actually seeing proper targeting of a facility in this kind of way, because I think, as you know, there's many a protest in front of a arms facility and in Canada, right? The pacifists certainly love that kind of activity, but actually touching and sabotaging the equipment, now that's a whole different story for Canada.
Oh, yes, yes. And I read the reports about it. And clearly, the group that did the action is anonymous. They didn't call themselves anything. We don't know their names. They didn't film themselves as Palestine Action does in the UK. So it shows you, I think, a beginning of even more radical possibilities than Palestine Action. Because once you're fully secret, cell formation working on actions this serious, uh, things I think will be more even interesting. Because now this is not anymore about a media war, let's say, or propaganda war. This is actually, at any moment, any of these military factories in Canada, without announcement, without putting them on a list that could heighten their security or anything, will become a target by this radical revolutionary group. And I think they should be commended. I think they Palestine Action was a great thing in the UK and the boldness of doing it all in the open, but it will be even more hurtful to the pride and prowess of intelligence services and security services in Canada if they're getting hit from places they don't even know exist.
Almost certainly. And just to give people an idea of the extent of what they're able to do, in case they haven't read the statement, they said they cut wiring inside heat pumps on the gas house roof. They locked them out. They somehow got official Ministry of Health and Safety lockout tags. They managed to shut off the gas, broke handles for the systems, and then they even managed to cut lines to backup communication system on the way out. This is a wild, wild. You would talk about this is the kind of thing that would fit in a movie plot, right? This is a grouping of radical activists in Canada. It's we've talked about this like for at this point months on end, about the need for radical action, and I couldn't even see this degree of radical action coming in Canada. I like most certainly applaud it. And well, the good news is we don't know what's coming next. That's actually a very good thing in the greater scheme of this, because right now we don't have a wider movement for Palestinian liberation, and the limp wristed, movement that was whimpering about how mean the Canadian state is, Sammy Dune, right? Just so kind of showcases the overall situation is poor. So these kind of direct groups, these cells as you talk about, in the meantime, by far the best way. By far the best way to operate. And my goodness, if this is the start, then there's some reason for optimism, I must say.
Yes, there is a reason for optimism, and I think the proximity of those fake elections in the US that we just saw, and the bleakness after 1 year, the 13 months of genocide, is finally, pushing people in the right direction. There's a lot of, decades of liberal conditioning that has been done, psychological conditioning for the populations in the West, and seeing it finally being broken is a great thing.
Oh, for sure. And liberalism is a cancer. Liberalism was what could be used to justify slavery. It's what's used to justify colonialism and imperialism coming up to the more modern day. Liberalism is a cancer and it has to be overcome for a revolutionary consciousness to emerge. Open Zionist fascists and the liberal Zionist fascists, they all had a meltdown about the visit of the special rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967. That's just the formal title, Francesca Albanese. So she had a start of a Canadian tour. Now, this is still ongoing. And there's a whole pressure campaign once Zionists learned about her being there. So they were able to prevent law faculty space from being used at McGill University. But Albanese was still able to speak at McGill because of the student unions. And then you had a Palestine conference that we talked about that happened in Montreal. Albanese pulled out. Zionists were able to pressure point by presence of Charlotte Cates at this conference. Of course, now this is a farcical thing because the terrorist designation, again, there's no proper process for such a thing, evidentiary, etc. It's just if the public safety minister thinks you're a terrorist group,
So you're
put them
telling me,
on.
I didn't know this, but you're telling me that Albanese withdrew from the conference in Montreal because of the presence of Charlotte Cates?
Yeah, pretty much because that was the only thing the Zionists went after, actually.
So this is where the limit of even this liberal human rights framework is. See, she is good, but I did hear her. She had a press conference at the press gala, I guess, on the Congress, Parliament, sorry, in Ottawa, and I was watching, and some Zionist garbage, journalist, quote unquote,
Oh,
asked
Brian
her,
Pasifume, I think it was.
yeah, asked her about the Israel's right to exist. And she gave what I, in my mind, when I saw her answer, I was like, shut the hell up to her. And she was like, well, Israel exists. I mean, this is the most liberal answer that you can give. Truth of the matter, Israel doesn't have a right to exist. The question that should be thrown at anybody that says, do you think Israel has the right to exist, is like, on what grounds do you believe Israel has the right to exist, Mr. Shitty Zionist? Is it because there's a man in the sky that is not the God of Abraham, is not the God of Moses, that says don't kill, don't steal, don't covet your neighbor's things, and that says that we all come from the same mother and father, and Adam and Eve, all humans are equal? Because it's a God that says that there's a chosen people and that they can kill, steal, and covet other people's things? That's definitely not the God of or is it because you think that there is a purity of blood? You believe in the pseudosciences of racial hierarchy, that you think that Jewish Europeans somehow have a higher purity of blood from 4,000 years ago, from a mythical expulsion and migration, and they have a higher, purer blood than the Palestinians? Or is it that you think that the Palestinians have to pay for the Holocaust that the Germans committed against their Jewish compatriots?
Like, I think you know very well the quotes that have been said. I think it was by Ben Gurion about European Jews that are, I believe it's Ben Gurion, that are just horrifically disgusting, talking about how it doesn't matter how many, like, how many go down, essentially for the state of Israel to become a thing, to become a possibility. So obviously, I know you're
Yes.
saying
So,
rhetorically, but
so
people need to
hearing
understand that,
her,
yeah.
hearing her give that answer gave her away as a liberal. Here is, she's supposed to be a repertoire about Palestinian human rights. And here's Charlotte Cates from Samidoun that represents the rights of Palestinians wallowing in the dungeons of Israel. Hmm? And she pulls out because she doesn't want to be affiliated with that. So what is it? So to me, even this concept of, having this woman being the face of it is demeaning. And the other thing that I would say is I noticed that everybody's praising independent Jewish voices for having her. What about solidarity for Palestinian human rights at McGill and other campuses that are being targeted that couldn't? She needs a Jewish platform, and we need to praise those liberal Jews that refuse to say that they are anti-Zionist, IJV, for bringing her to speak. What difference is it going to make, her presence ultimately? Did it change anything? Her words since the beginning of this genocide? No. So ultimately, I think part of the work that, the results of her work right now in Canada is the reasserting of Jewish supremacy by giving such praise to IJV and others, and reasserting the what do you call it, uh, expulsion of Palestinian militancy from any acceptable platform, to refuse to stand with Samidoun, which is the cutting edge organization that is revolutionary in the diaspora of the Palestinian community, is like refusing to stand beside the resistance on the ground in Palestine. I do not care anymore about anybody talking to me about Palestinian human rights, whether it's Albanese or anybody else, because that clearly there is no such thing as human rights, and it's only our right to defend ourselves that I want to hear people assert. Anyone that refuses to assert our right to carry arms against our our occupier should be refused to speak on our behalf.
All right, so even with the positions and some of the weakness of what Albanese said, she couldn't even get to speak to the Liberal cabinet or Minister Jolie because, of course, they're running around to please the Zionist lobby, and the
And she
Zionist
deserves
lobby
it.
is
She
what they want.
deserves it. Once you give in 1 inch to the Zionist, like what she did with this refusing to be on the same conference as Samidun and or her answer about the existence of Israel. Once you give them that, you already bent over. Why would they care for you? They're gonna just kick you in the behind while you're down there. And that's what she got. She deserves what she got from the Canadian government.
All right, so the other, well, we actually have two more stories. So we have Zionist MPs. They melted down about a protest at the Westmont Synagogue, and it was done because I believe Elon Levy, specifically, former spokesperson for the Israeli government, was speaking there. And of course, the backstory about this is that the Zionist groups got an injunction in terms of the synagogues and such. But of course, they were using that as cover to restrict and attack protest in terms of pro-Israel events. Now, obviously, they targeted injunctions also for McGill and so forth, but that's off the topic of this specifically. So what can I say again? It's just this repression of protest in Canada, and it leads into this situation of this seemingly cell that has come to exist in Canada, where it is a model for the future, because we have brazen fascists in the Zionist lobby, we have brazen fascists in the Liberal government, and they don't care what you and I think.
Oh yeah, and the IJV wants to sit at the SSMU McGill Student Union in the comfort of that room with Albanese, but is not willing to go and crash into that synagogue of Satan, where their own religion, Judaism, is being the being like humiliated as a religion, and all its tenets being violated. So IJV, their work should be actually not only demonstrating in front of this synagogue, they should be crashing it and kicking out the rabbis of the temple, like Jesus did.
All right, so we do have one more element, which is the Deborah Lyons, the Canadian Special Envoy for promoting Israel's genocide. That's what it is. Eve has called it something along the lines when he's written for Canada Files. I certainly would endorse that. I think you would for sure. She released this crucial handbook, the Canadian Handbook on the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism. And of course, the IHRA definition itself is, again, it's a farce. It's a Zionist definition. It pretty much equates criticism of Israel as anti-Semitic. So this farce came along, and it managed to eventually get some pushback from, shockingly, actually, the NDP actually did push back on this IHRA handbook. Uh, so Deborah Lyons was backpedaling a little bit, whining and saying that, oh, this isn't policy; these are just recommendations. Just like Nye Brith's 7-point plan for instant fascism in Canada. It's just recommendations until there's people bashing your head in. It's just recommendations. And then all of a sudden that bat's hitting your head and it's no longer a recommendation. But it's a little too late at that point.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And all these groups that are complaining that the this guide came out of Canadian Heritage or Ministry of Heritage of Canada were all silent when the Community Media Advocacy Center was under attack 2 years ago, for calling Zionism as genocidal policy and using the words Jewish supremacy. So again, you see the limit of liberalism right there. NDP and or CGPMA or whatever it is, uh, making statements against this now. It's too late. You all watched as they were creating this and were attacking CMAC and myself with 3,000 media segments and 3 million social media posts and public lynching of CMAC and myself. And they told you then we are now have implemented the IHRA, and every group that wants to take funding from the Minister of Heritage has to sign on to the IHRA for 2 years now. They're complaining that there's now a handbook. Well, you signed on the dotted line, God damn it. You signed on the dotted line to get the funding. It's too late. Talking and talking and talking and going nowhere while all the rights are being stripped. So I don't care about the NDP. I don't care about CGPMA. These are all groups that are irrelevant and sucking money and power and energy from the community. The NDP will never make anything for the liberation of Palestine.
We're on the same page, Leif. But it's news, obviously, as you know. So that's what I say to people again is look, the Palestine action style or the outright sell action in Canada, that's serious action. The whining and griping from the official, approved opposition is going to get you nowhere. It's going to get you nowhere. And I think at this point, I think a lot of people might understand that, but you got to start acting. If you don't, again, you'll have little right to complain when those batons, if you're lucky, are going down on your head. So, going to leave this episode of Canada, Palestine, the War on Zionism right there. If you appreciate the journalism and analysis done by both the Canada Fellows and Free Palestine TV, please do go ahead and set up a monthly or annual donation or consider a one-time donation as well. And well, Leif, thank you as always for co-hosting the show.
Thank you. See you soon, Aidan.
And to the audience, thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Goodbye, everyone. See you next time.